Hi, good evening. Welcome once again to the Gildarie Freddie Kissoon show. We also coming to you live on YouTube. You can get it there in the Guyanese Critic page or tune in to TBN or Daybreak News on YouTube there as well. Wherever you are, good night, good morning, good midnight. Happy New Year's to you and your family as well. We've missed you the last couple of days, and we have taken a couple of days off because of the holidays. I know people got to take a break to recharge the batteries. I'll be back with you with a bang this year because we got to get things right. As always, this program we've said to you in the beginning, and we're gonna say it to you again. We don't play here. It's serious business when it comes to this country, the running of this country. We want to know about the leaders, what they're doing, what decisions are they taking. We want to know what the opposition is doing. We want to know what the government is doing. And here on this program, we discuss it, we analyze it, we dissect it. And of course, we talk about this and many other things that make the news, people that make the news. Tonight, again, wherever you are, I want to say Happy New Year's to you and your family and your business and your team. Freddie and I, my co-hosts, we wish you all the best in this year. I'm not going to dilly-dally tonight. I'm going to run straight into things because we have with us a very charismatic young man, somebody who's in charge of some very critical areas in Guyana. We want to talk about cricket, we want to talk about things that are sports, and so many other things in Guyana, a very important position. Freddie Kissoon, I want to say good night to you, my co-host. Happy New Year to you and your family. Right over to you, sir, for you to introduce our guest.
Well, good evening. I'm wondering if our guests need any introduction. Sports occupy a very big part of the human mind. I remember decades ago, someone cynically and jokingly said to me, if any government if you want to overthrow a government, just pay some English football hooligans and they will come in and block up the country. So that goes to show how important sports is to a nation, to people. The largest turnout in the history of Argentina was when they won the World Cup. So our sports minister need no introduction because when you're the minister of sport, you are here, there, and everywhere. But with us tonight is one of the rising stars of the People's Progressive Party. He was a parliamentarian, then left to study oil and gas science, came back, and in the 2020 election victory of the PPP, came the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture. I don't know if I got it right in that order. But Charles Ramson Jr. is a figure, a politician, a minister that needs no introduction. But for protocol, ladies and gentlemen, our guest this evening is Charles Ramson Jr., Minister of Sports, Youth and Culture. And I want to start my first reaction to Mr. Ramson, not as a question, but an advocacy. You know, Mr. Ramson, I take my dog every day for years now in the national park, so I know people there after being so long in the park. So these people, some of these people that I know came up to me and said, Mr. Kissoon, must support our fundraising for the karate building. The karate building is falling down and we need to put it back on a good footing, and so we have fundraising events. So I said to him, there were three of them speaking to me, so I said to him, you talk to the Minister of Sport. He comes across as a guy that will do things, he gets things done, and I'm sure if you approach him for some funding for the karate club, I will close my eyes and he will do it. They said, well, we've been trying to get in touch with him, but he hasn't responded, and we think he will help because his two daughters are members of the karate club. So, Mr. Ramson, my advocacy is, can you help in the restructuring physically of the karate in the national park?
Well, that's a good way to start. And let me just also say thank you for inviting me. And I would like to wish you and your families and your guests as well all the best for the new year. So those two, in that area where you have those studios where they do dancing and table tennis at one point. They have a gym there. They have karate being done. Two of those don't come under our care, and that is the gym and where the karate is done. But yeah, they know how to get in touch with me. It is something that hasn't been brought to my attention in relation to that, so I'll engage them.
Okay. All right. The second question is, when we spoke about you coming on this program, you did say to me, you know, I've looked at the program and their guests talk about the elections. You know, I was there. I saw everything. And if I'm on your program, I would like to talk about what happened at the Ashman building. I'd like to give you my experience. Well, the floor is open to you.
Yeah, so it was a very harrowing experience during that time when there was that open and transparent attempt to rig the election. A lot of it has been rehashed many times before, and there are the videos that are in place already. And most people don't know, but I was the counting agent in Region 4 for the 2015 election. So exactly
for the 2015,
for the 2015 as well as the 2020.
Okay.
So as well as the 2020, I was the one for the 2015 election. So all of what you saw transpire there, that happened in 2015. The only exception was that there was no Facebook Live there, and there wasn't a team of people overseeing and supervising what happened at Ashman Building. So I saw firsthand, and if you check in 2015, there's an article that would have been published, maybe I think on the 15th, the day before David Granger was sworn in, that was published in the Chronicle, where we did an interview, a press conference, about 2 o'clock in the morning, the day before, and we explained how those figures were changed on a spreadsheet, and then they had locked down the building. So the Ashman's building, which was the returning officer for Region 4, that was their home office. In the 2015 election, it was where the Civil Aviation building is, in Main Street. So exactly what transpired there, the only difference that I just mentioned, you had no Facebook Live, you didn't have a team of people that were there supervising the result. They were changing the result of the election for particular ballot boxes. The major difference as well was the margin, that they couldn't be, they didn't need to be as flagrant in the 2015 election versus the 2020 election. That was the big issue. The big issue is that they couldn't make the fraudulent attempt to rig the election, make it easy, because the margin of victory was so much larger. So it became a naked and transparent attempt. But when we were there, it was you can see that there was this attempt, but that they were just trying to figure out how it can be done all the time, pursuing relentlessly. And it never ended there. It continued all the way up until August 1st, before we were sworn in. Court cases after court cases, attempting to be sworn in on the election, on those fraudulent results. I remember when I went to, I was in the building, and I went and met Mr. Mingo, and I introduced myself to him as the counting agent, Majid Hussein, who was also one of the party representatives. He subsequently died. He was a really solid individual for our party, and he was the one that took me there to introduce me to Mr. Mingo. And I told him, I introduced myself, and he said he was aware. He knew that I was the counting agent. For the next 2 or 3 days, we conversed as me as the counting agent, and him as being the returning officer for Region 4. And ultimately when we sent in the letter for the recount, they said that they don't acknowledge me as the counting agent. So it was a very disturbing, traumatic, and harrowing kind of experience. It was a really rank attempt of a hoist of the country, of a heist of a country, and I'm really happy that we didn't go back down that road, which we were in for up until 1992.
Thank you very much, dear Minister. I want to ask you, during that 5 months, from March 2nd to August 2nd, was there any time that the PPP, your colleagues, Barjack, the Air Finale, felt that this thing is going to be that we're going to be in for the long haul? Did you ever feel that way, that this thing is not going to be over in a little while? That was there feelings of frustration within the PPP camp?
So the leadership from former President and the General Secretary, Barjack Deo, at that time came since 2015, when he became the leader of the opposition. And when we saw what happened in relation to the appointment of the unilateral appointment of Justice Patterson, that became very clear to me, and it became clear to most individuals who are connected to politics, especially ones that are either supportive or sympathetic, even members, etc., of the PPP. It became a major red flag for us. And by the no confidence motion, and when we saw they started to change their tune about the 33 is not a majority of 65 type of situation, it became very clear coming from the General Secretary that we were in for the long haul, in the sense that we're focusing on the long game. In fact, that was the phrase that he had used. So we knew that this was going to be a struggle to win back the country in relation to securing our democracy, but that the fight was worth it. So it was never a situation where the frustration amounted to any kind of wavering. It was a firm commitment that we're committed to seeing securing the democracy on behalf of the entire country. That's our number one responsibility. Where if we don't have free and fair elections in this country, we will end up where we were for 28 consecutive years during the PNC days, where all of the institutions were destroyed. We became the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. In fact, a lot of times when the PNC or APNU AFC like to speak about our record, they attempt to position Guyana as though Guyana began in 1992. That's where their narrative starts from. But the fact of the matter is that Guyana was always, in the 1960s, 1950s, and 1960s, was always one of the richest countries in the region. And the PNC took that country for 28 consecutive years and turned us into the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, even poorer than Haiti.
You're a lawyer, so you would know how to handle your response. You saw what people like Roxanne Myers were doing. Were there any encounter you had with her? Did she insult you? Did she ask you to leave or anything?
No, not Roxanne Myers. I had very little contact with Roxanne Myers. Obviously, I can see what she was doing. I had more engagement with Mingo and Lowenfield, and but it was very clear to see what was happening.
But you saw what Roxanne Myers was doing.
I was there all the time, so you can see that there was a very clear attempt by a number of persons who they did not want to read the results from the SOPs. They were committed to reading from a spreadsheet. even when you had persons like Taney Husty and Pauline Chase and a number of persons representing the Bar Association but are election observers. This is civil society groups. So, and he had to read the law while in Ashman's building to say that you must read the results from the statements of polls. And they continue to refuse, and then stopped the verification, go up to the platform and make an announcement. We don't know what the announcement was. We just saw him moving his lips, and then I saw them, he was surrounded by the police at a certain point. When I went up to the top of the stairs where his office was, all of the door handles from the doors that were the offices on the top floor were removed. All of the handles from the doors were removed. So you couldn't enter. I rapped on all of the doors. Nobody answered. Eventually, when everything happened and the paramedics came, when there was an allegation about whether the chairman of GCOM was alive or not, when I was downstairs, after all of that happened, when I was downstairs, because we never saw Mingo, I saw him exit out of the building, being surrounded by police officers, being escorted very rapidly down the back stairs, and secretly out of or out of a back entrance, a back exit.
You can we continue this, but we'll get to sports, or we can maybe enter sports now. You want to speak on that barrage of accusations that the PNC and certain African spokespeople about you being disrespectful to black people, when they say that you're saying that there were no black people don't have well, they attributed that to you, which you...
Yeah, I never said that. That's not what I said. And if you go back, there's a reason why the quote was never played by the opposition. They never played my quote because they know that that's not what I said. So I think that my record, both, I grew up in this country, I grew up in Georgetown, I attended public schools.
Your grandfather was associated with the PNC.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think there's enough of my personal history as well as my history in relation to the 2 years and a quarter that I've been in this position for people to know who you are and what you're about. And you've got a lot of people who are connected to me, so that I'm not worried about the persons who attribute particular things or try to use it for a particular purpose, which is political. We know what we're about. We live in a very multi-ethnic society. Our party is a party that focuses on making sure that there's balance and trying to reach out to all communities. And that's something that President Ali said to me and to the entire cabinet from our very first meeting, that he wants to be a president for all of Guyana, all communities, and that's his clear direction.
But your
to us.
portfolio would directly put you in the presence of a substantial portion of the youths of this country, African Guyanese.
Yeah.
Sports is very important, and you must have developed a rapport with African youths, and you seem to be doing well in their presence.
Look, the bottom line is that real recognizes real. We have a very instinctive appreciation of knowing whether somebody is being genuine or not. That's something that happened with us for evolutionary purposes. Judging somebody, attempting to judge people based on their character,
Yeah,
their
that's a
actions.
human instinct.
It is. You pick up things very carefully.
So, that's so true.
And you do it almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
So when people
And
are
it comes with experience too.
Yes, absolutely. So the folks who are being fake, you can pick that up very easily. So, like I said, there's no room for any kind of, in a modern Guyana especially, there's no room for any racist ideology or racism. And especially as far as our political organization is concerned and the direction that President Ali is leading the country, there's no room for that whatsoever.
I thank you very much for that, Minister. Minister, I would have been paying very close attention growing up over the years, watching cricket, and so I look at CPL last year and the success, I would say success, because there's the economic side of things, and then you see the love of sport. Hotels were filled, the youth crowds, and the passion that people would have felt to that. I look across in Trinidad and I saw the success over the years of Carnival. You look at the Jamaica situation and you see the sports people, Usain Bolt and so on. Your ministry would have a responsibility of culture, youth, sports. I want to ask you specifically about sports tourism, because when I look at CPL last year, I said, hey, while we look at all the ministries like agriculture and so on, here is a big thing that really galvanizes the entire country. You would have had a hands-on approach to CPL. What kind of money did we bring in there, and what are some of the plans going forward?
Yeah, so when it comes to appreciating the direct revenue, you won't be able to say exactly how much money would have been brought in. I used an example in COVID because that was a much more sterile environment when you had the West Indies bringing the World Cup on the 19th. And in that situation, we quantified that we were able to get about $3 million US into the country, just on having the tournament in the country without having any fans, because we knew that we were going to have some fans, but it was free. On hotels alone, having the tournament in the country, it was about 1.5 million US dollars. That left out, the food and the transportation and all that kind of stuff that goes along with having the tournament here. So yes, we make investments on, let's say, stadiums and the upkeep and stuff like that, but the kind of investment that comes into the country as a result of us being able to host the activity, those are direct injections into people's pockets that you're not able to fully quantify. We use, for example, the number of persons who came into the country in September. In 2022, when we had Cricket Carnival and the CPL finals and semi-finals for the first time, it has surpassed any other month of September. I think it was actually double. I can't remember the exact figure, but I think it may have been double. But it surpassed any other September that we've ever had in Guyana's history of recording numbers of persons coming into the country. That is a representation to show you what kind of interest sports tourism can have and the direct benefits. When those people come with money in their pockets, it's like direct revenue into the hands of people in the country. So no, it doesn't have to wait to go through a procurement process and you have to wait for tendering to complete or a contract to be awarded and completed and evaluation to be conducted. None of those things have to happen. It's direct spending, and it goes into the basic, at the very ground level, the taxi guys, the hair salons, the barbers, the food folks, the bars, the waiters, the tour guides. In preparation, I'd even showed people in preparation for the tournament how even getting your place ready for Airbnb, because we've had I think it was over 100 folks who registered to become Airbnb that were new. From the moment that they started to get their place ready, the carpenters started to get work, the masons, the plumbers, the stores that were selling the materials, all of that combines into the spinning of money in the economy and getting economic activity generated. So we're convinced, in fact, a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now in relation to building the facilities, it's focused on what can we do to get more sports tourism into the country, because we know the economic value and benefit of it.
People who are watching this program will see that you have something in front of you. Our guests don't normally have anything. And they would want to know, what is it you have in front of you? Gildarie has his notebook, I have my mango pelto. What is that you have in front of you?
So I watched the interview that you had recently, the last one, which you had with the leader of the opposition, and I mean, it really was fairly painful to listen to for that long a period of time, because the opposition in the country has really, it's commonly understood now in the country that the opposition is useless. It's a waste of time. They don't have any kind of serious relevance anymore. And a lot of that has to do with the kind of leadership that they have in the parliament and coming from their political organizations. During that interview, I heard you say something, which was because he spoke about voter impersonation and dead voters and a number of things that we've heard them speak about constantly. And if you remember what was the sequence of events that led to the recount that happened in Guyana, there were a number of observers. Some left because of COVID, and then they were trying to get back into the country. The government, APNU AFC government, said they were not going to allow a certain number of observers back into the country.
Including the
Carter Center was not allowed to come back into the country, for sure, I know. And there were a number of others connected to various international agencies that were stopped from coming into the country. What did David Granger say? He said that CARICOM was the legitimate interlocutor. That was the phrase that he had used in relation to who would supervise the recount. He called them the legitimate interlocutor. Subsequent to the recount, which lasted 33 days, which initially, for coming out from the Secretariat, the plan was obviously to delay. It would take 165 days.
Yeah, Lowenfield.
Right? Lowenfield had said 156 days to do the recount, even though it took us 5 days or 3 days or whatever to complete the count and the verification. Right? It took us maybe a day, 2 days or so to complete all the SOPs. A day to complete the SOPs, but the verification of it, that took a little bit more time, let's say 5 days in total. He was saying that it would take 156 days to do the recount. Anyway, they produced a report. And in that report, when reference was made to the voter impersonation and voter fraud, etc., the CARICOM observers produced a report that responded to that. And in your interview with the leader of the opposition, you said that in the CARICOM report that it was said that it was a fishing expedition.
Yeah, I have
that was the phrase that you used in your interview, and Aubrey Norton said that it did not happen it did not say that in the report. In fact, he said, where does it say that in the report? Suggesting that it does not say that in the report.
I had that, that's why I told you.
So I brought the report just so that I can help Aubrey. Obviously, it's clear that he hasn't read the report. I'm sure that the viewers want that type of information to see who's correct and who's not correct.
So tell us, what is this document?
This document, this is the CARICOM report. Yeah. This is the CARICOM report, so you can see
the recount report.
The recount report, right? You can see the face of it. And remember, this is produced by the legitimate interlocutor, according to David Granger. It says here, in relation to the challenges were made often on death and migration, right? They started off here by saying the numerous requests for information on serial numbers were so bizarre that on one observed occasion, an APNU AFC agent was prepared to query serial numbers on the OLE in a workstation where no one had voted. And then they said, these challenges were often made on the grounds of death and migration. The team viewed much of the exercise as a fishing expedition. Page 8.
Now, you know,
Page 8.
the guy should be embarrassed. He's told me that, but you know, this.
In fact, it
you have
says
to be
more than,
courteous to your guests. So.
in fact, it says so more than once in this CARICOM report. So I just wanted to bring this.
I want to bring your
assist.
attention, Minister, to David Granger. You mentioned David Granger as the president of, he was the then president of Guyana. I want to ask you directly whether there was any evidence or your feeling during that 5 months. One, was David Granger in charge? Was he calling the shots? I want to hear from you.
No, well, I wouldn't know that, right? I wouldn't know what was happening internally in relation to their government, like who was giving the instructions to ministers and stuff like that. What I could tell you is he was the leader of the country. And he saw and would have seen and would have heard, because he agreed to the recount, so much of the shenanigans and all of the untoward things that were happening at the Ashman's building, right? What struck me even more than anything else is that when this recount was concluded and CARICOM produced this report, he had an interview at State House. And during that interview, someone in the media, I think it may have been Dennis Chabral, I'm not sure, asked David Granger, did he see the statements of polls? And he said, no, he did not see the statements of polls. In the interview, this is 3 months after, he saw the spreadsheet, and he was satisfied that that was the accurate one. Now, I'm thinking from my point of view, you're leading anything, let alone the country, in an election. You know that there's a problem. You know that there's someone saying that there are statements of polls that give a result that is showing one side is winning. Another group is saying that they have their statements of polls, which you're supposed to be the leader of that group, by the way. But keep in mind that you're the leader of the entire affair, the entire country. This other group is saying that they have statements of polls, and that their statements of polls show that they also won. You're going to tell me that you have the ability to see those statements of polls, and you haven't called to check and see what are the results and get 5 persons, 10 persons, how many other persons? You're the president of the country. You have people at your disposal. Do the tabulation and see what is the results. You are in possession of those because you're the leader of the list for that party. So you should be able to say, these are the statements of polls, tabulate the results, show us the results. Notice, incidentally, that Aubrey Norton dodges the question about the statements of polls. Always dodges. When I heard you ask him about the statements of polls, he said, whatever his response was, not giving any clear response about what the statements of polls that are in the possession of the APNU AFC, what is the result of that? Dodging, slippery and slidey. In fact, at one point he said his phone was ringing, his driver is outside.
I want to stick to that, this area of discussion before we move on. Jerry Gavaya was here, and he said that he believed that Mr. Granger took the decision to concede. Do you think that Mr. Granger did that? Or as against those who were, I know there were 2 women, I don't want to call names because of libel, one from the PNC, one from the AFC. The one from the PNC was very abusive to Mr. Granger. But do you think in the end that decision was Mr. Granger alone, or the rest, or the school decided to concede? Mr. Gavaya seemed to think that Granger did the right thing and conceded.
By himself?
Yeah.
That's the question, okay.
It was no longer his call once the declaration was made.
No, I think what Freddie is trying to...
I know what he's trying to say. I know what he's trying to say. But from the moment that the declaration was made, it was no longer his call to concede. So I didn't even see it as a situation where he was conceding. In fact, if you read the statement that was attributed to him, that was on his page, which I kept a copy of, it said that he maintains that there were irregularities, that he has seen the declaration, he acknowledges the declaration, but he said that he maintains that there were irregularities and they will pursue it through a court action. That doesn't sound like a concession to me. So it was more a situation. In fact, we've heard many times that the folks who are involved in protocol, they were preparing to have him sworn in on more than one occasion. That doesn't sound to me as another example of conceding. All of the court challenges that you would have seen, Eslin David and the other one, I don't remember the name at the moment, but a number of the court challenges, at any point in time, as far as if I'm the leader of the party or any leader of a party, you can stop those proceedings. So I didn't see it as though it was a willing concession. If you wanted to get to the bottom of the situation, you would have called for the statements of polls. After the declaration was made, it was no longer his call to make.
Thank you very much.
You made some remarks about the opposition being, if not moribund, losing its existence. There's been some devastating remarks by the treasurer of the PNC who resigned, in which he said a number of blank checks were given to him to sign since he's the treasurer, and he doesn't know the amount that were filled into that check. Could Aubrey Norton survive that kind of scandal as opposition leader? Is it now with that kind of scandal, is the die cast that he's going to be challenged for leadership? That's a very, very serious accusation for the treasurer of a major political party to make against the opposition leader.
Yeah, so there's that, which is the issue of his integrity. Well, issue of his integrity or anybody else's integrity in relation to what was happening for their financial situation. But just as serious is the allegations of the racial discrimination. That there, as far as I'm concerned as well, is very clear that so many persons have come forward to say that it's not just him alone. If you read the statement, the comments that were made by the treasurer,
he said a big name was harassing him.
Supported by other leaders in the party to act in that way, where he's feeling the racial discrimination. Now, that is another example of the creature that you're dealing with within the PNC. And it's not just Aubrey Norton alone. There have been more than one instance of individuals coming forward. In fact, before Aubrey Norton's election to become the leader of the PNC, you've had persons, an individual by the name of Crawford, doing an interview, I think on Mark Benchcroft's thing, which was, the video was circulated. He had made those allegations against him. Now, nobody can say whether an individual is racist or not racist based on, let's say, one allegation or two allegations and stuff like that. But when so many persons are coming out and speaking about the organization which is the PNC, that it is acting in this way, then very serious questions are now raised in relation to whether it is a credible multi-ethnic party.
As a leader of this country, Minister, and as a spin-off from that question, should we as a country, should you as a government, as part of the government, be worried that there's not a strong opposition in place? Should we be worried, especially at a crossroad where this country is taking off in so many ways?
So I've heard this argument before in relation to a strong opposition. And I think oftentimes the statement presupposes the inclusion of another word, but it is not. It does not include the meaning of this other word that I believe that must be included. So it's strong, yes, but strong and responsible. Responsible meaning constructive. Let's use, for example, the local content legislation, which our party had made commitments to in coming into the election as part of our manifesto. We passed the Local Content Act, but during the debate, we had no support from the opposition. No support. I remember David Patterson, when he was making his presentation, he gave a long explanation of why he can't support the local content legislation. And for 5 years, we were pressing through the local content policy, through the local content legislation, so that Guyanese interest can be protected, especially at the beginning, where there's a lot of basic goods and services that can be supplied by Guyanese. They can enter the market, start to build the networks, move into new areas. They never did it. They refused to do it. Never provided an explanation, never completed a policy at the minimum. Then when it comes to us passing the legislation, instead of standing up for Guyanese interest, they refused to support us on that. So the point that I'm making, I'll use another example. We came for a supplementary budget, right? Sometime around August or something like that. Might have been just before August or so. They did not attend Parliament. So we're talking about a strong opposition, but it has to be strong and responsible. It has to be constructive too. Mm-hmm. Look and see when it came to how we did it in opposition. And I don't want to give them any advice, so I'll leave that point in relation. But the country can see what is their intention. Look, we did something basic like a cleanup, Freddie. We did a cleanup earlier in the year, last year, that President Ali said, look, we're going to get out to our offices, we're going to go into communities all across the country, we're going to do a cleanup with a whole bunch of organizations and stuff like that. Start to change the attitude of the country, start to really take on the responsibility to say, look, this is our place, make it better. Do you know that a press conference was done by the opposition, where opposition members were there, city council members were there, etc. And they said that they are not going to participate in the cleanup. They also said that they were going to instruct their NDCs, etc., not to participate in the cleanup. So, strong, yes, because you want oversight, but it has to be strong and responsible and constructive. You can't have people who are refusing to acknowledge that they've lost an election. Up to today, they are refusing to acknowledge that they've lost an election. And it's just going to continue to get worse for them now, because especially when people can see that there is this aggressive move by President Ali's government and his cabinet, and that we're driving through the process of development in a very, very aggressive way, that and they're not doing anything constructive as a result, that they're going to continue. It's just going to continue to get worse for them.
Well, we can't let you leave without and disappoint our viewers. You're the Minister of Sports.
Before you go into this, there's something something I wanted to touch on, because I remember when Aubrey Norton was elected, And when he got elected, he started to cry in his presentation and all this, kind of like a little baby. And he also said that the PPP is afraid of him. The PPP is afraid of him becoming leader or being leader, or something like to that effect. Now, I think that, the only thing that is afraid of Aubrey Norton is probably his mirror. But what the PNC doesn't understand, and what they don't get very carefully, is this new crop of leaders that former President Bharat Jagdeo started to build when he was president. A long time ago, he started to build them, and this new crop of leaders, we're not afraid of the PNC. We're not afraid of doing what we believe is right for the development of the country, and that when we are taking on the responsibility of leading the country in our various ministries, etc., we are very serious about getting the job done. Nobody has to supervise what we are doing, in the sense that you have to beat us in the morning to wake up and get to work and all of that stuff. There is a very aggressive attitude towards our work, but the party has changed a lot, in the sense that our crop of leaders that started to build during that period of time when President Jagdeo was president, the PNC doesn't scare us. Those days are gone. It will never return. And what you're having now too is that you're in our cabinet. You have the strong leadership coming from President Ali, and then matched with the experience that we have in some of our ministers who were ministers before, and then we have the energy that's coming from our youth. And today's government is far more complicated than the governments of yesteryear. You can say that you can leave it up to your advisors as much as you want to, and technical support staff and stuff like that. It cannot work in today's government. You have to be very good at project management, good with numbers. You have to be good with law too. You have to be good with people. There's so many things that you have to, so you have to be far more technical. And that's where there is a serious deficit in the opposition too. Forget about the fact that a lot of them always just want to spend time on social media, where they do shows in the morning, they do shows in the afternoon and in the evening and stuff like that. They lack the technical capability to run the program. I'll use our budget as an example. All the time they were saying we had a 40%, 50% increase in our budget from the last year. They said we don't have the technical capability of completing what our execution of our budget. That's not true. I mean, when you hear all of the projects that are being done, and you look at the PSIP for most of the ministries, which PSIP means the Public Investment Program, Public Sector Investment Program, you will see that there is a high, extremely high delivery on expenditure. Right? Mm-hmm. Versus, I remember doing a presentation at where was it? Was it Marriott? It was in Marriott, the same place that they said that they were going to turn into a hospital when they came in 2015. I remember doing a presentation there where I had made reference to the fact that we were in November, the budget was passed in December of the previous year, and one of the ministries, which had one of the biggest budgets, they had only spent about 30% of their budget, and that was on public record. So it's the point that I'm making is, the folks who are being critical of what we are doing when so much is being done, you also have to start off by, first of all, acknowledging the work that's being done. And if you want to be critical, you also have to say, what have you done? You have to also say, what have you done? Very quickly, Freddie.
Yeah, as I said before, the PNC, 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 the PN we have to talk about sports. People are going to ask you, want to ask about this, you want to ask about that. There are two ministries, I believe, in a ethnically sensitive country like this, could be invested with the capacity to reach out along ethnic lines to ameliorate and even overcome ethnic suspicions. I think those two ministries are the Ministry of Social Services, because it brings services to people. And the important ministry, not of sports, but of youth, sport, and culture. You're pictured always in the media meeting youths, sports thing, football, cricket. Are you satisfied that that ministry could be one of the pivots of cutting into this ethnic suspicious thing, is cry of ethnic discrimination?
One of the ministries, I think all of the ministries have a very important role in relation to building trust across the country. So that's one of the things that I felt was really important, that despite the fact that we were in COVID in 2020, that when we came into government, that was a clear direction coming from President Ali, which was, we have to do community work. And we took that on with aggression and a sense of fervor and enthusiasm, which maintains to today. It wasn't a situation where, and I had said that in the first few months, that it wasn't a hot and sweaty type of start, and then it started to taper off. Up to maybe in the first part of December, in one weekend, I did 15 communities. 15 communities in 2 days. That's yet an example of it being no different than what it was at the beginning. We have an aggressive Brown program, but that started because when we came out of that really tumultuous affair in the country, it was a difficult, a hard-fought election. It was also a difficult transition. I think the country had to heal, and it was very important that what we did and how we did it in relation to the community work, and being able to have that engagement with people, and also the support in building together. Because you go back to the days of when Chedi was speaking and writing on the Western Trial. He didn't speak only about unity. He spoke about unity and struggle. Struggle in the sense that not wanting you to struggle, but struggle in the sense that you were working towards something. And that was a pattern or a recipe that would be important of how you're going to build trust. Use sport as an example, because I know that that's where you led me to a moment ago. When you're playing on a team, you're fighting to win a championship, etc. The person who's batting or bowling or shooting the ball or kicking the ball or whatever, you don't care what race he is. You don't care where he came from. You don't care who he voted for or anything like that. Similarly, when the Amazon Warriors, they're playing at the National Stadium, or the Golden Jaguars are playing somewhere, they're not there because persons that were on the team there are of a particular ethnicity, or they don't care. We're there because we know we want to win, and it's a team effort. The country, no matter how you twist and turn it, everything that we've seen, the movement towards integration over the decades, is only going to continue to happen. And I would say it's going to happen faster. And that's another thing that the PNC hasn't really understood. APNU AFC grouping, they haven't really understood how the dynamics of the country is changing. That the country is integrating faster now, and that the idea of pigeonholing yourself into the ethnicities, etc., it's just going to make it worse for them, because Guyanese, whether we have a particular race, we have friends of all kinds of races. We eat foods that are from different ethnicities. We wear clothes if we get the opportunity to. We attend. It's music. There's dance. A whole bunch of stuff that are related to culture that doesn't allow the stratification in this enclave kind of way.
I want to ask you two questions, but I collapse them into one question because time is going. A national icon in sports, Nicolette Fernandez, and our current lightweight boxer, there was
Kevin Alicock.
there was a little controversy in Paraguay, in which apparently he suffered a cardiac arrest, and Alicock and Fernandez stated that there wasn't a medical doctor on the Guyanese team, and one thing led to another, and accusations. I know your sports guy, Ninval.
Yeah.
Let me say that I like that guy.
Yeah.
I like Mr. Ninval. I think he's a very decent man, very professional in his treatment of people.
Yeah.
That's one of the person I like.
Yeah.
And he said, look, it wasn't the Boxing Association fault to have a doctor there. It was the Olympic Association.
Yeah, sure.
Isn't the government fund? Does the government fund the Olympic Association? Or give them some money?
No. We don't fund the Olympic Association. They receive money from the IOC, the International Olympic Association, just like the GFF receives money from their international body, which is FIFA. And then for cricket, they receive money also from CWI. There are no other organizations, or if there are, they may be just
But a
small
doctor
amounts
should
of
have
money.
been in that.
So you're right, and that's one of the reasons why we are having this discussion at the sports conference that we're having at the end of the month on the 28th, so that we can nail down and drill down some of the important things that have to be on the team. The issues that were identified, what's important though is that if you read Kevin Alicock's subsequent statement, which was released shortly after, he said it had nothing to do with the government of Guyana. In fact, he said publicly that he has been a beneficiary of the of government involvement and relationship with government, and he's been thankful for what we have been doing so far. But in relation to teams that are leaving overseas, the GOA has had a very clear kind of method where they limit their connection to government. For whatever reason, I've got my own reason for that.
Please.
I won't say publicly about that, but the good news is that they are expecting to have an election very soon, and that we're expecting to see new leadership happen there too, because some folks can't run again.
I'm talking about elections, Minister, going forward to 2025, and then I want to talk very quickly with Cricket West Indies. 2025, it's expected that Irfan Ali is going to run again as president. That means moving forward with 2 terms for him. You're still pretty young. There's also Anand and a couple. Are you going to throw your hat in the ring, sir?
I'm not. I'm so focused on what I'm doing right now. I'm not even thinking about 8 years down the line. What's important for me is executing my program, seeing that all of the projects that we're doing, that the programs impact people in a positive way. Some of the programs that we've taken on now, like for example the Community Ground Enhancement Program, which was originally part of the National Sports Commission. The ministry has taken it over. It's now strictly the ministry's program. That's something that we are dealing with directly. And I get the satisfaction, the complete satisfaction of seeing the success of our programs and our projects and how it impacts people, especially young people. So I'm not thinking about anything later down the line. What's important to me is making sure that the job that I'm doing right now, that we're very successful at it, and that people's lives are changed positively, especially young people, giving them the kind of clear direction and leadership that's important for them, because they're not just the future, they're now. And if you don't get to reach them, and some parents can't reach their children because of there's a little barrier there. I think they're too strict or one reason or the other. And for us to have that role where we can provide some of that leadership at the community level, at the very ground level, it's very satisfying.
I want your opinion. I know you cannot interfere, but I'd like to have your opinion as the Minister of Sports. I just said I had two questions. I collapsed them in one, but I didn't collapse the other question. When I look at you and your age, Minister Rodriguez, Minister Waldron, the Minister of the Public Service, you're pretty young people. And this country, 70% of its population is under 40. Half the population is 18. The Guyana, the Berbice Cricket Board recently passed a new constitution, passed new rules, new executive. And it was 3 terms for the head. Now they're changing that to 5 terms. And I heard the Guyana Cricket Board wants to do the same. What happens to young people then? Should they stick with the 3-term? If a guy, Minister Ramson, if a guy is 30 and a guy served 5 terms, when is that guy going to have a chance as a young man? I'd just like to have your opinion in this term limit thing.
It's so in sports in general, I think you've had issues in relation to people hanging on too long, right? And when they were hanging on too long, it didn't allow for the injection into a new direction or new talent, and for people to know that there is an opportunity there. So it's not something that having persons get the opportunity. It depends on the stranglehold that they have on the organization too, because you have the opportunity to move again to be a leader of an organization, it means that you will. But it becomes a problem when you're not able to have the new ideas, the new leadership, and the persons who are capable. And so when I say capable, meaning they have the capacity to do good management, they also have resources, meaning from a financial standpoint, or they have a technical background that they can come in and be part of the organization. So term limits have proven in many instances to be beneficial for at the very top type of leadership, but
the head of the Olympic Association is almost 30 years gone. A man heads to Olympic Association for
I saw that recently towards the end of last year, that the sports associations that fall under the GOA, they voted to have
over 70 you cannot be there.
You cannot be the president.
Cricket West Indies.
By the way, they already have the term limit, but that it would have. I understand that he would have still had an opportunity to contest because when it was implemented, there was some gray area in relation to timing.
Cricket West Indies, and we're nearing to the end. Is there any contemplation by the government of Guyana to exit out of the West Indies team, or let's say if there's not, what kind of pressure are we putting on the West Indies management team, the folks that govern the executives, to basically change the status quo? We've seen accusation of Guyanese being sidelined. There's not very clear lines how you select players and so on. What is the situation with cricket in Guyana and the future of the West Indies team, and how we are going to put our foot down? Because we're not poor anymore. We can afford a team.
Yeah, so it's not just a situation where, so to answer your first question, we're not contemplating any kind of exit whatsoever. The West Indies team has been, and especially the pathway in particular to get to the West Indies team, has been important for us, where we were able to be one of the teams that was qualified at the ICC level. There were far fewer teams at the beginning, but it was a team that was there where Guyanese had a direct pathway to becoming a member of the team, and it allowed persons from Port Morant and from Essequibo and wherever, Queenstown, you name it, to make it to that team and also have an opportunity to make it to that team. And out of that, folks from Wakenham and Unity, etc., became ranked best in the world. Best in the world, just because we've been able to do that. But when people examine where the West Indies sits right now, it is not in a position where we can be proud of. We were ranked best in the world, we were world beaters, and now if you look at our test rankings, we're probably about 8th.
Everybody beating me.
And if you look at our one days, we're probably just around 8th as well. If you look at us in T20s, we're probably about 10. So we're not where we should be, and many times the argument has been made about management of the affairs, and technically moving that argument towards one group, which would be what's happening at the board level. But I see this as many tiers of failure, and we first of all have to be realistic about where we were, where we are, and what happened during that time. And we also have to be informed about what other persons have done. When I say other persons, meaning other countries have done. I made a presentation recently at the Essequibo Cricket Board where I argued that it's not so much that the standard of the cricket has declined, even though it is arguable. It's not so much that it has declined, as opposed to the other countries becoming far better than us. But from a relative perspective, what happens is that your ranking goes down. Why did that happen over that period of time? There has been no serious investment that was made during that period of time, and I'll use Guyana as an example in relation to the West Indies team, not from the government side. The government did very serious investment, especially during our time. We built stadium, we made investments on grounds all across the country that allowed cricket to be played continuously, and it showed how the investment being made there led to a number of persons becoming West Indian players and becoming ranked in the world. Because just to cut a ground, right now you can cut a ground it will probably take you about $100,000 to go and cut a ground if you contract it out. And that's why the investment that we're making in relation to our driving tractor lawnmowers, those are very important investments that we have to make. We used to get a lot of assistance from Gaisuko during that time for all of those grounds. Now it's less assistance. The point that I'm making is that the government made investments, which for the stadiums and the grounds, etc. But we are a country where 1/3 of the year rain is falling. Rain is falling. How are you training during that period of time? Our training regimen reflects what transpired during the 1970s and the 1980s, which would be something akin to this. And I know it very well because I played cricket, and I played for a good period of my life. That's what I did. On a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if so many, you would go to cricket practice, and the cricket practice consists of having a net. Some bowlers bowl, some batsmen bat for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, and you're going to do some fielding, you do some catching 3 days a week. If you have a tournament playing on the weekend, you would play cricket on the weekend. That is the nature of the description of our training regimen that happens during in season. Out of season, you tell people to go and train. If they come to train, they go and run on the road, do some kind of run on the sea walls or do some laps in the park, and they consider that training. Meanwhile, other countries, whether it's cold, whether it's raining, whatever is happening, they have built the facilities that and we're talking investments that happen from the university level, it happened from the board level, not necessarily government level. They have the facilities where they can train every day. Why is that important? It's important because when it comes to training your skills as a batsman, as a bowler, even as fielding and catching, it requires consistent and deep practice. Consistent, meaning if not every day, almost every day. And that's not cricket alone. Every skill that requires cognitive development that involves your biomechanics. We don't have that here. We don't have the capability of doing the training that happens every day. That's why we're making the investment right now in doing the cricket academy at the National Stadium. And the model that we're using is that once it works, it's something that we're looking to do in other locations, because when I say other locations, meaning in other counties, because we want to see the practice happen on a daily basis, if not a daily, on a regular basis. There are folks who are contracted right now by the board. Some of them get paid $500,000 a month. $500,000 a month. Some of them, right? Some of them maybe less, maybe $300,000 a month or $100,000 a month, whatever. During the day when we became the best in the world, you didn't have contracted employees who were making that kind of money. Ask them, some of them, what is their training regimen? Some players, whether they make our national team or make the West Indies team, they cannot pass a fitness test. Cannot pass a fitness test. How are you going to be a professional athlete? And this incidentally passes as par for the course. How are you going to be a professional athlete where you're trying to say that you want to be the world beater, and you can't pass your fitness test, you're not training every day, you're not obsessed about becoming the best in the world or amongst the best in the world, while your competitors, on the other hand, they're doing it. So essentially what happened during that period of time, the other countries have outscienced us. They've focused on the things that they needed to focus on and make that investment, and built up their program in all of the sports areas.
Much needs to be done, ladies and gentlemen, and we have with us here Minister Charles Ramson Jr., Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports. Freddie Kissoon, very quickly in your closing.
No, I just wish you all the best in your future political career.
I know that you would indicate to me that you're building by 2025. There's how many stadiums you've been across the country?
3. So we've started our 3 stadiums already coming out of our budget for this year, and we are going to complete the synthetic tracks, etc., the tracks and the stadium. So we're looking to have all of those completed before the period of time.
Lots of conversation more with our minister, because as we talk about youth culture and sports, we have to talk about copyright laws. We got to talk about our musicians. So many topics to talk about, and I'm hoping that we can have that conversation, because we have seen that the president would have gathered a lot of the musicians and so on and talked to them, and maybe some grants being given out. It's part of the development, but you can't just expand your music if you don't have the kind of protection, copyright laws, and I'm hoping sometime with the other minister that we could see those things very quickly and the enforcement of it as such. Do you have anything very quickly that you want to say to the people in closing? It's a new year, maybe that you want to close up with?
Yeah, this is an exciting year for us. A lot of our big projects have already finished. We've done the procurement, the design, everything. It's already done. So what's going to be happening in a lot of those projects, you're going to see them come alive, and that's really going to make the big difference in relation to the quality of life that we're living. And I'm really excited about the future. I mean, I'm really happy about where we are as a country, and the direction that President Ali is taking the entire country in. It's really a fantastic place to be in, and I'm also very happy that to have that kind of leadership coming from him. People don't get to see firsthand because they don't have the working engagement, but I get that by being his minister, to see how great of a leader he is already, and it's also a president that is matching the time, and so every leader you can see being adopting to that time, and he has been able to show Guyana and the world, many parts of the world already, how great of a leader he is becoming. And I have the first-hand experience of having that engagement, and I'm very, very happy to see and get that kind of support from him, because a lot of times when I'm thinking X, he's saying, consider Y, or we should do Y instead, and that those are really good areas of advice and wisdom that I get from him.
Yep, and the Energizer Bunny, President Tirfanelli is. I just saw him on the roadways, inspecting these bank roadways, the new road of highway, and he was so impatient with those guys who did not even issue the contract for the connected roads. He just kind of walked away from the contractors.
I'm glad you mentioned that, right? In maybe December or sometime around just after he became president, and we were getting ready to roll out our new budget or something like that, just around that period of time, he did an entire presentation looking at the procurement timeline and looking at the impact of days
and delays,
and how it impacts on the project and the completion of the project. He did that in 2020, and he did that with the entire government, not just the cabinet, the PSs, etc., just so that you can understand. And many people won't get to see this. Obviously, they won't get to see this because this is internal, but just to show you how in tune he is in relation to knowing what has to be done and how it has to be done. We're very lucky in that regard.
Ladies and gentlemen, and that's what you call a go-getting kind of attitude as we talking about leadership in this country. On Friday, as we close down and wind down this program, on Friday, Freddie Kissoon and I are going to be talking a little about what happened in the last year in review, and those ministers and governments who got 0 points. We're going to talk about that. So I want to say thank you very much to our minister, very vibrant culture, youth and sports, Charles Ramson Jr. Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you and your family, sir. On behalf of myself and Freddie, and we hope to see you again. There are many things to talk about, and we wish you well with the government, and we look forward to see this government carry out this program this year. Good night, sir. Good night, folks. Stay safe on the roadways. No more madness on the road this year. Let's get our act together. Good night, folks.